Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to TestTube Plus today. I am Trace, and this is our final episode, episode 5 on human connection. We've talked about where love comes from inside of our bodies, why we have it, what's its evolutionary purpose. We've even talked about how to fall in love with science. So make sure you subscribe so you get all of those episodes. You can go back and watch them. We've done 4 so far. Today's the last one. And today we're talking about traditions of marriage, how you convert from being in love to being married, and why do we marry at all? Marriage, as we know it today, is actually really different from when the concept was introduced, which has been around since before recorded history. Most Americans today see marriages as a bond between two people who are in love, maybe some religious undertones, depending on the couple. But for a long time, marriages were a way of making alliances between families, between strengthening networks and tribes, and for social political gain. Love didn't really come into marriage in early human history at all. Marriage was just a contract between families. You would marry your kids off to bring as much gain to yourself and to your family as a whole. No matter how many times you had to marry them off, by the way, or to whom that you were marrying them. Some parents even married children to the spirit of a deceased child in another family in order to strengthen the bonds. Essentially, they're promising somebody to someone who is already dead and saying, oh, I would have wed him to them if they were alive, so now that person has to be a widow for the rest of their life. The idea of marriage was that it was an alliance. It was used to keep wealth between distant branches of a family or any number of other political and social gains. Rutgers anthropologist Robin Fox estimates that the majority of all marriages throughout history were between first and second cousins, as a way to kind of consolidate power and wealth at the top in the small family unit as you can. Religion adopted and standardized marriage eventually. Monogamy became the standard in Western marriages sometime around the 6th century, when the Catholic Church argued with old kings who wanted to marry multiple women. In 1215, the Catholic Church stated that partners had to publicly post bans, that's B-A-N-N-S, or notices of impending marriage in a local parish. What would happen is they would make this announcement, write it down, and then the people would read it out for 3 Sundays in a row so that people had time to object to that marriage. They wanted to cut down on the frequency of invalid marriages, make sure things weren't all on the up and up. And it wasn't until the 1500s that you actually needed a witness to have your marriage recognized by the church. Funnily enough, the church kept this ban rule on their books until the 1980s. Pretty funny. In the 11th century, the Benedictine monk Gratian, Gratian, set to change the rules of consent. Rather than worrying about parents' wishes, he wrote a law textbook, the Decretum Gratiani. The decretum required couples to give their verbal consent and consummate their marriage to forge a marital bond. The book formed the foundation for the church's marriage policies all throughout the 12th century and forward, and a lot of that still holds today and sounds a lot more like modern marriage if you think about it. You can read it, I'm sure. It's probably found online somewhere. It makes it more about the two people who are getting married than their families or political strategy of, their power center, wherever that is, maybe a matriarch, maybe a patriarch. Recently, far more recently, the state began getting involved to aid with the formalizing of marriage, issuing marriage licenses and making sure that people were recognized for tax reasons and for benefits reasons, and kind of saying, okay, yes, these two people are married, we can all confirm this, so businesses, please recognize this as well. The religious part is completely different than the legal part. Massachusetts only began requiring marriage licenses in 1639. This is pretty recent. But by the 19th century, marriage licenses were required by most of the United States. And marriage also, just recently, here in the U.S. and elsewhere in the world, started grasping the concepts of equality. The idea that it doesn't necessarily have to be traditional groups that can be married. Generally, it's accepted that the husband's was the role as the decision maker and the breadwinner, and the wife was the supporting cast. But now that it's 2015, maybe we're starting to grasp that these gender roles don't necessarily have a place in modern marriage. And perhaps we've recognized finally that marriage is strong enough to handle new ideas of gender roles, even as they're realized. Maybe they haven't been yet. Or, we can change and mold marriage as needed in society. Some things in marriage are going to hold. And some things are going to change. They always have. They continually have been changing throughout the last thousands of years. Modern marriage is great. It's becoming more equal, and in the West, it's a public announcement where two humans show their love for each other to everyone, not to gain land necessarily or get help around the house or something like that, but just to say, hey, love you. That's pretty cool. Love is tight. And I just want to take a second and thank Kay Jewelers. They are the #1 jewelry store in America, and they sponsored this episode of TestTube Plus. So thanks. Thanks for watching TestTube Plus, everybody. Thanks for watching this series on human connection. If you haven't seen all the episodes, here they are. Go back and watch them all. Let us know down in the comments how you feel about love, how you feel about marriage, how you feel about this series, and suggest any future series you may have. You can come back and tune in again on Saturday for more TestTube Plus. Thanks for watching. You can find me on Twitter if you have questions or just want to chit-chat. I'm at Trace Dominguez, or you can talk to the show. We're all there at TestTube.